Alright guys, this is my Twisting Blades Death Trapper build. It's based on the one on Wudijo and also another player called Smokes. He was the first rogue to solo a 100 Nightmare Dungeon. For this build, to be able to do high level Nightmare Dungeons, thinking 70, 80 plus, you need a lot of defenses. That's the thing lacking on a melee rogue. I'm going to go over my gear, the main points of the paragon board, the skills board. I'm going to start with the helmet. The main stats you want here are cooldown reduction so that you can spam your traps more often. There's no damage reduction apart from maximum life and total armor unless you're really lucky and got shackles. I've gone for more maximum energy so you can spam twisting blades more. There's a few other things that you could have got there that's not absolutely crucial. On chest, you want defensive stats. The most important one, in my opinion, are damage reduction and plus total armor. We're spamming as much armor as possible. It protects us from everything. It's not conditional. But as you can see, I didn't manage to find the plain damage reduction stat. So I've gone with what's next best. Maximum life, reduction from close enemies, and reduction from distant enemies. The gloves are pretty simple as well. You want critical strike chance, 4 ranks of twisting blades, and attack speed. The dexterity can be lucky hit chance if you want, or all stats, that's also good. Pants are another item where you just want to focus on damage reduction stats. Dodge chance, I'm not a big fan of. Some people say that it's underrated. I think that it's too conditional. If things are going to kill you in one shot, I mean, hoping for a dodge, it's going to save you once, maybe twice. But at the end of the day, you're still going to be dying. What we want to happen is for you not to be dying, so you have a chance to actually clear the dungeons. But this is the best I've managed to find so far. So as you can see, I've got total armor, damage reduction from distant enemies, from close enemies. I would have preferred that dodge chance to be plain damage reduction percentage. That would have been best. On the boots, you want energy cost reduction. Movement speed is really important. It's kind of a defensive skill. There's so much stuff to dodge in high level dungeons that the quicker you can move, the better it is. The one actual defensive stat on the boots that you do want to get is damage reduction while injured. Now this stat isn't great on other items, but since on the boots there's no other things like damage reduction or damage from close enemies, it's still really good. It's a good lifeline, especially when you have the damage reduction while controlling paired gems. I'm using these gems over max life because if you get CC'd, it's bloody frustrating to die like that. I just realized I haven't gone over the aspects, but you've been able to see them. There's nothing new here. They're basically the same as in Wudijo's guide, a few small changes. On the weapons, you want critical strike damage, vulnerable damage, and now the reason I've gone for all stats is because in the paragon board, there's quite a few bonuses that you want to get. Now the dexterity I still think is the next best thing, but there's also damage to core skill and damage to close enemies if you can't find a crossbow like this. On the weapons, very similar to the crossbow, you want vulnerable damage, critical strike damage, and then depending on how your secondary stats are, like intelligence and strength, you can go for either core skill damage, all stats, dexterity. I'm not a big fan of damage to enemies affected by trap skills. I mean, it's not the end of the world, but I'd have much rather have dexterity or all stats here. This one isn't the best of my swords. It doesn't have critical strike damage, but I've been farming for so long, that's the best I could find, so just gonna have to take it. Rings, you want to really try and get maximum critical strike chance, then vulnerable damage, critical strike damage, and maximum life. Some people do go for lucky hit chance instead of maximum life, but I think in high level nightmare dungeons, you do need survivability. So both of my rings are similar. This one's got maximum energy instead of crit damage. Just haven't been able to find another one. Amulet, another item that you want it to be basically mostly defenses. You can see that my aspect is the armor one. With this aspect at 100 stacks, which gives you 75% increase in armor. I go up to 15k armor, which is really good. And then instead of damage reduction from enemies that are poisoned, I would have preferred plain damage reduction. Energy cost reduction is good. Cooldown reduction is also good if you can't find anything, but focus on defensive stats. That's the most important thing. If you can survive, you will kill the stuff. Now, If I go over to my paragon board, this is a more variation of smokes rather than Wudijos, but I'm going to go over to which glyph sockets. On the first paragon board, you definitely want to go with closer. The reason is there's a lot of dexterity bonus, rare nodes, so you're getting a lot of damage to your cutthroat skill damage, and as we're spamming twisting blades, it's really good. It also gives you these damage reduction if you use a melee weapon. What a big conditional statement. Anyway, the second board is the Deadly Ambush, and I do make it to the legendary. I take the armor, taking the trap skill cooldown reduction, and they're reducing the arm time of your trap skills by 0.5 seconds. The reason this is important is poison trap and death trap. If they take 1.5 seconds to arm, sometimes you die before they can trigger. But if they trigger, everything goes well, because now most of the enemies are knocked down, you can kill them, you can spam poison trap and keep them knocked down. Essentially, this is a very good defensive to take. And then these are just the glyph I've got here is exploit. This is no brainer, just gives you the ability to apply vulnerability even easier. Then I go to the exploit weakness board. I do take the legendary, it's quite nice. We always keep enemies vulnerable, this increases our damage. Combat, critical strike damage is a very good stat given that it's on the multiplier. If you don't know, I'm sure you've heard it quite a few times. The base damage is multiplied by the vulnerability damage, and then that's multiplied by the critical strike damage if you do a critical strike. When you multiply things, the effect is much bigger. This is why this is such a good glyph. And then I'm taking damage reduction from vulnerable enemies, 100 armor, etc, etc. The next board, which we don't take the legendary, is Cunning Stratagem. We're really only going here because we want to put the diminish glyph on something that gives us a lot of defenses, and the rare node is this one, Lawless. You can see that with the diminish bonus, I'm getting 675 armor. That's massive, really good. And then here you also get a decent amount of boost to your core skill damage. So we're just passing by this paragon board really. And finally, we have the cheap shot board. We do take the legendary. We CC enemies quite easily, especially if you're someone who likes to use the unique legendary boots. And we use the chip socket. There's a bit of a debate on this one. Smokes uses this chip glyph because there's more dexterity nodes here. You can see that the rare nodes give dexterity, so you get more of a bonus. But if you use turf, you get another 10% damage reduction, I think, to physical damage, which is really good. And like I said, damage reduction is sometimes more important than how much damage we do. But I'm willing to experiment. For now, I'm using chip. Feel free to try and use turf. Obviously, you want to max these out to 21 level by doing nightmare dungeons. On the skill tree, there's not much change. We're using the exposure passive skill. We've got the energy reduction stuff. Got one on the ultimo skill, giving me a bit of energy back. Death Trapper, blah, 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 blah. The only thing that's really a change from Wudijo's, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing his name right. I'm sorry if that's not how you say it. But this one I've maxed out. So initially you wanted this on just one rank to get the CC effect. But now anything that helps you keep enemies from attacking you is really good. This is just a defensive choice. Is there anything else? No, that's pretty much it. This is all standard.